Hi, hello, welcome or welcome back to my place on the internet. I'm Amanda and I post a lot of videos relating to my favorite music, LGBTQ stuff, lifestyle stuff. It's all over the place really. Since it's Pride Month and I happen to be LGBTQ, I thought I would make a video on LGBTQ topics. So today's video is on biphobia. Also, before I begin, I did want to say this video was inspired by a Twitter thread that I saw like 2 months ago, I want to say. It's by this user, Juwan's Lovejoy. I think I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm not completely sure. Their thread is what caused me to want to make this video in the first place, so definitely check out the thread. I'll have it linked down below. So the first thing I want to do in this video is define what biphobia is. According to the Human Rights Campaign, which if you're LGBTQ, it's the yellow equal sign with the blue background. I'm pretty sure we've all seen it, but anyway, they define biphobia as prejudice, fear, or hatred directed towards bisexual people. It can include making jokes or comments based on myths and stereotypes that seek to undermine the legitimacy of bisexual identity, like bisexuality is a phase or bi people are greedy. Biphobia occurs both within and outside the LGBTQ community. So basically, biphobia can be displayed through microaggressions, misconceptions, straight out hate towards bisexual or biromantic people. Another important part of this definition is that it can come from both inside and outside of the LGBTQ community. As someone who identifies as bi myself, I have seen it worse inside the community at certain points, which is really sad. Alright, so now that we have the definition covered, it's time to move on to some examples. And most of these come from the Twitter thread that I mentioned earlier. Assuming that all or most bi women end up with men and are settling when they do so. Portraying or assuming that bis are cheaters or incapable of commitment. The idea that a bisexual in a male/female relationship is in a straight relationship. This one makes me so mad, and it also goes along with thinking or assuming people are straight because they're dating someone of the opposite gender. Like, you don't know that. Seeing bi women as mostly straight and bi men as mostly gay, both of these literally revolve around being with men. Delegitimizing a bi person's relationship with the same sex. So for example, when I had an ex-girlfriend, sometimes people would start to refer to her as like my friend or like things like that. Like if they genuinely don't know, that's one thing, but once they know that you're dating and they still do that, it's just very invalidating. And honestly, that one hurts. That one hurts because they don't do it when you date people of the opposite gender. Like, I see how it is. Thinking that bisexuality is only attraction to men and women. I understand why people assume this. I used to think this years ago too, myself actually. But bisexuality is a lot more than that. It can be attraction to just men and women for some bisexuals. But for some bisexuals, it means attraction to all genders. For some bisexuals, it means attraction to two genders, not necessarily men and women. It can mean a whole bunch of things to a whole bunch of different people because bisexuality is a spectrum and an umbrella term. Alright, sorry for that rant. Treating bisexuality as half gay, half straight. Some bi people joke about this. I personally joke about this because my attraction is really split 50-50 personally, so it technically is like half gay, half straight for me a lot of the times. However, when you're not bi, you should not make jokes like that unless your bi friends are telling you it's okay if they make the jokes themselves or something. But you shouldn't just assume that about every bi person. You just shouldn't view bisexuality like that in general, like the whole concept of bisexuality. Specific bisexuals might fit into that, but not bisexuality as a whole. Telling bi women that they can't say slurs such as the D slur because they aren't gay enough. Now, I personally don't really say any slurs just because, I don't know, I was never called them. I just don't feel like it's something that I need to do or want to do. But I think it's very problematic to say that WLW aren't allowed to say slurs that were directed at WLW if they are bi. Slurs that were used against all WLW should be allowed to be reclaimed by all WLW, and saying otherwise is straight up biphobic. Overly sexualizing bisexuals. I feel like this happens a lot, especially to bisexual women, where they just get sexualized or overly sexualized, and it's just very frustrating and hard to deal with. Not treating biphobia seriously or completely ignoring it. This would be like saying bi people don't face discrimination or don't face enough discrimination or hatred, when oppression should not be a competition whatsoever. Thinking or acting like bi people can never be completely satisfied in relationships because they are attracted to both genders. I've seen bi people joke about this, but when it comes from straight people who actually believe this, that's when it becomes biphobic. Acting like bi people who prefer the opposite gender are invalid or not actually bi. Specifically in my experience as a bi woman, I've seen a lot of times people will be super accepting if you're a bi woman who has a preference for women, but when a bi woman has a preference for men, it's suddenly treated as they're spicy straight, they're not actually bisexual, and it's like, no, they actually are. You can't just be accepting of one end of the spectrum and not the other. Like, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me. It's very biphobic. Saying bisexuality is a trend or that everyone is bi these days, I actually see this within a lot of different sexualities where people are saying like, oh, everyone's LGBTQ these days, or it's just a trend. But specifically with bi, it's biphobic, but with all sexualities, it's a problem too. There aren't actually more LGBTQ people. It's just more acceptable for LGBTQ people to come out and be themselves. Thinking that everyone is a little bit bi, this one, I used to say this as a joke years ago when I first came out as bi, even though I never fully believed it, but some people like actually believe it. That's literally just dismissing the whole community, and that's not even true. Seeing bisexuality as a gateway or stepping stone to being lesbian or gay. This one, I know where this stems from historically because I've done research on it, and I know it's because a lot of people used to come out as bi when it was more acceptable to be bi than it was to be lesbian or gay, and then they would transition from there. So it makes sense historically, and it also makes sense that people will transition and find different labels because sexuality is fluid and people don't always know their sexuality right away. So it makes sense why this one is a thing, but it's definitely not true. Like, there are people that are bisexual that have been bisexual their entire lives, like they haven't changed. Being upset when a bi woman dates a man after coming out of a relationship with a woman. This one plays into the ones before about like bi women not being able to like men or feeling shame about liking men, but it's okay if they like women, you know? Claiming that bi and pansexuality are the same thing or that one invalidates the other. Acting like bi people who haven't been with all genders aren't as valid. This one is so messed up. I see people all the time asking for like your dating receipt history, and I'm like, bro, like, you don't have to date every single gender, you don't have to do things with every single gender to know you're bisexual. Like, when you're straight, you don't have to test it out with every gender to know. Like, you know what I'm saying? Generalizing bisexuals and their preferences, gender identities, actions, beliefs, appearances, etc. Now, in the bi community, we do have a lot of jokes about like what a bi looks like, you know, like cup jeans, listens to sweater weather, etc. But besides those jokes, like actually believing stereotypes or generalizations, that's what can get you into problems, because bisexuals can look like anything. They don't have one look or one personality type, one way of living, etc. Ignoring or completely erasing the history of bisexuality and its origin. I've seen so many people try to do this. Like, we have a bi manifesto from 1990 and a lot of really cool bisexual history, and people will just completely not want to know it. It's important. Our history is important, and you know, it deserves to be taught along with other LGBTQ history. Ignoring or dismissing people who talk about their experiences with biphobia. This one goes back to the one about talking over people when you aren't actually bisexual. But yeah, completely dismissing experiences of biphobia or things that bisexuals go through because you haven't experienced it or you can't even imagine it is just completely biphobic. Obviously, that's not every single example of biphobia, but I think it's a pretty good starting point. Moving on to the next part of the video, I wanted to talk about how this actually impacts bi people, because I think that's a pretty important element to this. I will link some studies down below that have more information on this. Basically, biphobia, like any kind of discrimination, can have a pretty negative impact on someone's mental health. So bisexuals have been shown in multiple studies to have a lot more mental health issues and higher rates of depression, suicidality, etc. I feel like it's so disappointing that bisexuals have higher rates of all these mental health issues and no one really talks about it that much. I mean, like, I sometimes see people talk about it, but for the most part, it's just not really focused on in the community. That is all for this video. I will have a lot of information and resources linked down below in the description box, and if you want to hear a video about my own experiences with any of this, or anything else related to LGBTQ topics, let me know down below what you would want to see. Hopefully this video was helpful and kind of enlightened you, or you could relate to it on some extent if you're bisexual. Yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you next time. Peace out. This seems like a good background, I guess. Wait, this is too high. Oh my god, I turned my ring light, now there's like a bug attracted to the light. Ugh, whatever.